Hey everybody, this episode of Working Dog Radio is brought to you in part by our friends at Ray Allen Manufacturing. Everything you need for dogs, whether it's working dogs, pet dogs, sport, anything, rayallen.com, the best in the business. Check them out. We got a discount code Working Dog Radio for 10% off.
Another one of our favorite partnerships is with the one and only Dogtra. These guys are producing some amazing tools in the dog training world. Everything from e-collars, GPS tracking, ball training. If it's electronic and it goes on dogs, go to Dogtra. They're revolutionizing the way you communicate with your dog. Head them up at dogtra.com. Use the discount code WDR10 for 10% off a single item over $200.
The biggest and baddest conference in canine anywhere in the United States is HITS. Every year, each and every year, hundreds and hundreds of vendors, thousands of attendees, the best instructors around. It got moved because of COVID. It's going to be July 7th through the 9th in 2021. Check it out. HITS, letter K, number 9.net to get signed up. You can't go wrong. HITSK9.net. Let's see you there next year.
Yeah, speaking of some guys that are going to be there next year, the Kinetic Dog Food guys. Fueling a working dog can be tough, but they need high-quality food to give them the energy and the nutrients that they require for the work that we ask them to do. Kinetic Dog Food is a great balance of healthy meats and grains and is specifically made for working and sporting dogs. Be sure to hit them up at kineticdogfood.com.
Easily, hands down, the best product we've ever represented on this podcast is Quick Derm by Vet Care. Ted and I use it in the kennel on our dogs when they get goofy injuries, and ourselves when we also get goofy injuries. They have a discount code for us, 10WDR for 10% off your first order. Check them out at vetcare.us. All right, everybody, Working Dog Radio, we are back on Zoom, hopefully not getting it deleted this time, and that the episode gets used. So that we can actually have our first one that you can see where there's Ted and I and our guest with us. Speaking of Ted, from Tulsa, Oklahoma, is the hairy one, Ted Summers. What's up?
Right? No, not a lot. It's unseasonably warm today. I got a handler school. I'm on the third day of a 6-week handler school today.
Me too.
So thankfully he's an experienced handler, so it's not that big of a deal. And he understands leash control and leash management, and the dog's kind of a dick, but you know, I mean, he's a Malinois, so it is what it is. Dual purpose dog. He's going up to the, he's going to be in that Central Indiana canine group up there with Kyle Schaefer and those guys. So,
cool. Yeah, those guys are good.
Yeah, he's got a nice dog. He's going to go home for Christmas and then he's going to come back after the first year. He's actually going to be at our HRD in January in Muskogee because that's right towards the end of his school. And I'm just making him go with me. So that'll be his like graduation week with me. So, yeah. What have you been up to?
I'm also in day 3 of a handler school. I have 2 guys there. One's an experienced handler. I have 3 handlers. One's experienced. This is his 3rd dog. The other 2 are green. The one is replacing a handler that got fired from his job. Mm-hmm. And it's a dog that I trained 3 years ago, I think. His name is Buddy. Good dog. So Buddy's been on the street, got street bites, working, rock and rolling, certified 3 times now in Ohio. And then the handler comes and he's left-handed.
Oh.
And the previous handler's been right-handed the whole time. So, yeah. So yesterday, the 3rd handler, the other green one, started. He couldn't be there. Or he wasn't there on Monday. I can't remember. But he's left-handed also.
Man.
And the dog that I pre-trained for him is ready to certify right now with a right-handed handler. So
one of my handlers is left-handed and shoots right, or vice versa. I don't remember what it is, but I'm like, hold on a second. And I'm like, this is like shaving in the mirror. Like, what side do you want him to heel on? Like, where's your firearm? And I'm like, what? So yeah, God, yeah.
A lot of left-handed guys, man, I notice, like they're left-handed, but they shoot a rifle right-handed, and because of the dominant eye sometimes, and then they can shoot a pistol left-handed. And then if you play softball, they're batting right-handed. And it's like, what the fuck's going on up here, man?
Yeah.
With the head. So, what do we got today? I'm super excited about this episode.
We have the executive director for Uspca, Don Slavik. For those that don't know, Uspca is the largest nationally recognized certifying agency or body in the country. Large, well-respected standard, been around forever. I'll let him tell the whole story. But Don, how are you?
I'm good. And you?
We're doing well, rocking and rolling, training dogs and handlers and trying not to get bit, which is what I seem to do every day.
So Don, typically what we like to do, and I know you listen and everything, is go through a little bit of your history, kind of your canine story that led us up to today.
Okay. I came from the city of St. Paul, handler trainer, 21 years there. I retired, started doing some expert witness testimony. About 4 years into that, ATF called me and asked if I would like to come and train for them. So 8 years later, training for bomb dogs for ATF for a variety of people, from their special agents to city, state, and local at that time, and then for foreign countries. And then after that, I went into the State Department and worked for 2 years over in Iraq, supervising the canines for the State Department.
Wow. That's so real quick. And we talked about this, you and I, before, but when I started at the police department was May of 1996, May 6th, we got hired. There was 6 or 7 of us, and all but one of us had been to the academy. So they had us at the police department, like learning the detective bureau and the vice unit and all this other stuff. But we also had the canine, our canine unit was really big involved in USPCA. And they, as it turns out, were holding the national event. And it was, I think, May. I think we got hired on the 6th. I think we got assigned to help them like 2 weeks later. And
you show up as a new dog at a national event, or as a new dude. You're like, I just work here. I don't know what's going on.
Yeah, I don't know. I got a couple great stories, but and I remember hanging out with the canine guys, and they were really, talking all the brotherhood stuff and really explaining what it's meant to be in that law enforcement and in that city and everything. And then there were guys from all over the country there. It was so cool. And I, of course, all I was just an errand boy running around helping out. But I got to do some decoy work. Of course, throw this idiot kid, 26-year-old kid, in a bite suit in a men's room in a park. In the city, and that was my first introduction to St. Paul, Minnesota's canine unit. And I got to tell you, I was infatuated. Like, the guy running the scenario that I was helping, John Skalski, was a hardcore dude from Detroit. And every guy in Detroit canine had shot a bunch of people. Like, it was a Wild West for those guys. And even Skalski was like, those guys are awesome, the St. Paul dudes. And so I always remember that. And I remember when they were on that TV show and they had all that going out. And I loved watching the St. Paul guys work. And they were serious about their business, even though we were having a lot of fun. But here's my quick little funny story. So I got Gary, who was a handler then, the senior handler. I got his cruiser, and it was an old one of those Chevy Caprices, the big, huge ones with like the big bucket trunk and all that stuff. And that was giving me the car to drive back and forth. So I'm out there, and some guy from one of the agencies didn't have a car, and we were doing pursuits and bailout stuff. So I let him use Gary's car, and they're driving around this field in this place like idiots. And the guy crashes the cruiser into some bleachers, dents the whole back left quarter panel of the thing. I'm like, shit, I don't know what to do. So there is a video of me and another guy with a PR-24 in the trunk smashing the dent. I have 2 weeks on the job, smashing the dent out of this car. And I don't know, it looked pretty good. I go back to the host hotel at the end of the day. Gary, here's your keys. Whoop, toss him the keys. Peace, brother. I'll see you tomorrow. And about a week after the conference, he's like, what the hell happened to my car? Somebody hit my car. I'm like, sorry, Gary, don't know what happened, buddy. And then the video comes out of me bashing the trunk and everything. He's like, really? Didn't know anything, huh? So, and I think, Don, you were at that event, were you?
I probably was in the last tenure of my presidency as a president of the USPCA. And I believe that was the one where San Francisco PD or Sheriff's Department was there, and they were rappelling off the side of a building and showing how that worked. And I think those are great memories. I'm smiling well here at listening to your tale, because that happened frequently. There's a lot of things going on, and unfortunately, the newest people, they get the best jobs, and but they also could turn out to be the best trainers. I can see that happen here.
Yeah, it was interesting too. And what I really liked was the nighttime stuff at the conference. I was like, guys, I'm gonna have to get a room. Like some dude from the South brought up some real moonshine and just annihilated these northern boys with that stuff. It was pretty interesting.
I have to say, I don't remember that.
Yeah, of course, of course not. So let's go back when you were in St. Paul as a handler. How many dogs did you handle?
Probably 6 or 7.
Jeez. All dual purpose?
Yes.
Let's go pick a few. I like to, when I have guys that have been on with a lot of dogs, pick a few, talk about them, tell me what you really liked and what you didn't like about the dogs. If you could kind of combine and make a perfect one.
Back in those days, the head trainer, they used to sample different breeds. And I had given my dog away to another handler from outside the city because there had an accident happen during training, and he needed a dog. And so he got my dog. So I got a Rottweiler. And the Rottweiler was different in that all the usual things that you look for in a dog is the ears moving and the tail going and all of those things. It was a whole different thought process and how that dog was going to start communicating with me and tell me he was okay. But other than that, we had a variety of dogs. So unfortunately, except for that dog, they were all shepherds. We were shepherd people back in those days. In the early days, it was, what are we supposed to do with this dog, kind of a thing? What happens? I mean, in the police department, that was the thought. So how do we use these dogs? So it was a learning process for us and for them. And we used our dogs. I had a bomb dog and I had a narcotic dog. And then I actually had a single purpose dog right at the end, Labrador, when I was a head trainer. And it much easier to maintain a single purpose dog, and it worked really well. But we were very progressive. We tried many different breeds while we were there, and to see if we could make other breeds work for us, just like the shepherds did.
That seems to be like a current thing now. And, there's an admirable thing, because we have those people that are doing the shelter to police dog programs, where they're doing single purpose pit bulls and some other stuff. And inevitably, I always get questions at Torchlight for people that want what I would consider an off breed, not a Dutchie, not a Malinois, not a German Shepherd. And I'm always like, oh, I mean, if you can find one, like, let me know and I'll take a look at it. But I mean, inevitably, it just seems like the pool of those dogs is exceptionally small these days. Occasionally, I'm trying to remember, Eric, have we seen one in any HRDs that were in one of those off breeds just not one of those three, not an off breed, just not one of the three that was a super nice worker. Not that I can think of.
No, the closest we've had is a couple of Tavarian mixes. You could see it in them. I think there was actually one in Utah that I was like, that dog's a Terv. And they're like, what is that? And I'm like,
oh yeah, that's right. That dude had that. I called him Fuzzy. Dude, I don't remember what the dog's name is. I just called the dog Fuzzy. Yeah, he's no long hair, but I mean, it sounds like it's coming back around again, Don, for people that are like, oh, I want to use this, or I had a handler who now, in fact, they just found a bunch of drugs last week. He has a German Shepherd now, but he asked for a giant schnauzer, and I just said no.
We did one of those. We did one of those.
How did it work out? And when was it?
A long time ago.
Yeah.
probably in the 80s.
Wow.
It came as a special request, and so we took it on, and there was some history about giant schnauzers in police work, and so we thought we'd take a look at it, and it worked out pretty well. It was a smaller law enforcement agency, and they just clicked. The handler and the dog clicked, and they had a great time over the years, doing things with the dog. So we did a flat coat retriever one time. I don't know we would do that one again. It was a good dog, but it's one of those dogs that was different.
I was at a local seminar here in Oklahoma about 2 or 3 years ago, and all the handlers are out working drugs, right? And this dude has this black lab, and he's from a tiny town like way out south Oklahoma somewhere. And I'm like, oh, dog did decent work, right? And there's a bunch of state evaluators standing with a bunch of state guys, and I'm like, oh, okay, whatever. So we get ready to do apprehension work, and he gets this dog out, and I kind of stand there and look at him, and Hagner's with me, and I'm like, what are you doing? Like, we're getting ready to do apprehension work. He's like, oh, I know. I was like, and sure as shit that it wasn't very good, but I mean, that dog would bite you. That was the weirdest. It was the only time I've ever seen or heard of a dual purpose lab. Black lab. I can't remember where the dude is from, but it was somewhere down south, like south of Norman, like towards Texas border off I-35. But I mean, he would bite, but I was shocked. I was like, wow. So that somebody like, did you pick the dog? And he was like, no, we bought it from a vendor. They sold it as a dual purpose lab. Like,
okay. You don't hear that. You don't hear that very often.
No, you don't. That's the only time I've ever seen it. So it was an interesting day, to say the least. That dog was defensive as shit, like super defensive. He would bite you for sure.
But, so you're the first person we've had on that worked a Roddy that has been on the show. I'm just curious as to like, what did he bring that you really liked?
He was, I think, typical of the breed. He was in tracking. He was a footstep after footstep kind of sniffer. So as we tightened up the area and with police squads and things like that, we would flush this dog out, and it would be a half an hour later before we reached where the police vehicles were, because he was very methodical, very good. There's no doubt about it. He was very good. He did well in everything, and he was the first dog that we trained him to be not aggressive to gunfire. So he was super relaxed all the time. When he barked, though, he had a weight shift, in the back of the car that would rock the car. He just like one side to the other, and he sounds his bark is a little bit deeper, it seemed, and so he did well. We did a lot of building searches, a lot of tracks with him, so it was good. So
that's funny. I have a Malinois right now. One of those going to the left-handed guy that I posted a video of him on Instagram today. He's another one. We'll get to you. We're gonna find guys. It's just gonna take a little bit because he is whoop whoop whoop. That dog's never skipped a piece of food, and I think I'm at 30 paces right now in between, and he never misses ever. It's crazy.
There was a Rottweiler. There's been several in PSA that I was decoying at a trial, and we're doing a flea bite. And I thought I was going to have to slow down because I was going to run out of field for him to catch up to me. I'm normally running at the speed that I need for a Malinois, and I'm like, where is this dog? And I'm looking over my shoulder. I'm like, where is he? And he's coming. He eventually gets there, and then having to drive him was a nightmare. I thought I was going to need shoulder surgery after that. It was that dog weighed. He damn near weighed as much as I did. It was a big old boy. Yeah, for
big
sure.
Dogs.
So after St. Paul, you then head over to the ATF, correct?
Yes.
And what year was that?
2004, I think it was.
So that had to be pretty early on in their program, right?
Oh no, they've had dogs. They had dogs for a while. When I got there, I mean, my first day, I was sent to Albuquerque to help test agents. And then we moved around a lot. I mean, I had a bag ready to go all the time. And it was a great experience because they have some pretty interesting ways about how they introduce explosive odor that I was not used to. they handle themselves a lot. They have a system where they test dogs that I like a lot, but most people can't afford to do that. Is that we'll test the dog, and then bring them back, sit around for a week. There's people there that'll take them for walks. It's really nice. They're environmentally conditioning them all the time. And then another trainer will come in, test that dog, and on a different area, and then he'll go back inside and they'll walk that dog. And then a third trainer will come in and test him in a different environment. And if any trainer can say that's it, he's done during the process. And if all three trainers pass him, then he moves into a school.
Wow.
So we were doing a lot of agents. That was back when the government was supporting city, state, and local with classes out at ATF. There was a canine initiative, and so the people were being brought in, and we would run them through a series. It was 2 weeks to begin with, and they were offered all this training for free, and so they would come in, and we take them all over the place, and it was good. It was really good.
So what method were they using to introduce explosives at that time?
It was just a sniff. So there's a few people that do that now that I've ran across. So in other words, they have a little sniffer tin. They put a product, it's usually smokeless powder or black powder, and they just put it there and they might tap the can or whatever. But if the dog comes over and sniffs, he gets a couple of kibble. And after 2 or 3 times, the dog gets the idea. There's no commands, there's nothing. He's just sniffing, and they present the can, and then they start moving it all around. They will put a gallon can out and set it in corners, and they don't teach the sit command at all back then. Right. And so it was a little poke in the rear. Once they knew the odor, then it was all about fixing the sit, and you could put a handful of food in front of their mouth, give them a little poke, and they'd sit. You open your hand, they get it right away. So when you find the odor, you go into sit, you get fed. So they were big on things such as a bridge command. They used that. They were using that all the time. That was my first experience with using a bridge command or some command like that, and that was really good.
Interesting.
Were they doing like a marker per se, or it was just A + B = C? You put your nose in there, you smell that food.
They had a bridge command, which was good.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And so that's how they translated it over. So, I mean, it's where I really learned how to take a dog and shape that dog without saying anything to him, just by what happened. If the dog moved during the sit, as I was bringing the food forward, I stopped my movement, which caused the dog to, okay, so my movement caused my food to stop. So I'm going back. They go right back into the sit. Then I would continue on, and it worked pretty well. It's good. It was a good system.
Interesting. I had a dog that I never intended to sell. It was a little Dutch Shepherd named Stiletto, and she still to this day has no obedience sit. Actually, I think they did because they certified nationally, so she had to pass the obedience portion. But forever, she went to a county or to a place where the district attorney was like super whatever, worried about like cueing, and apparently he'd had a run-in with a defense attorney that actually knew what they were doing. So I had this dog that, as a project, she was living in my house, and I taught her to find odor. I taught her to find narcotics, and she had no obedience sit command. The only time she would sit is if she found odor, and I did it kind of that way, and we ended up selling her. And they called us back, and they were like, "How the hell did you do this?" And I'm like, I mean, I waited for her to sit, and then we paid her, and then I marked her because I used the clicker. And it was an interesting project on my end, because I just wanted to see. I was like, I wonder if I can get her to do it without, because teach them to sit, and then I don't ever say it, but then I wait for them to solicit on a sit, and then we pay and we shape the behavior and everything else. But it was interesting, and when the handler took her back out to the district attorney's office or to the prosecutors guys, the prosecutors, they were like, well, we want to see her work. So they watched her work, and they were like, well, how did he do it? And he's like, I have no idea. And they asked, and I was like, I kind of explained it to him just like you did. And they said, well, can you do more? I'm like, well, yeah, but it was like a project on mine. We don't need to do it, but we can. So they were super impressed that I didn't have to tell her to sit. And I'm like, well, we don't ever tell them to sit on the road, so it's no different. So yeah, it's interesting to hear that they do that as well.
So a lot of guys go from like especially around the DC metro area will be canine handlers and get recruited to leave their departments either through retirement or whatever and go train dogs for Secret Service or maybe ATF or somebody else. None of them end up, going for 25, 30 years. Nobody goes that long. And usually it's because it's not as glamorous. It's more monotonous than they thought it would be. Or it's just, it can be pretty tough, hours wise and a kind of a, what do I want to say, like a conveyor belt, which Ted and our kennel's the same way. Next dog, next dog, next dog. Did you find it that way?
Actually, no. So you're assigned to a class. So during the class, you are responsible 7 days a week because if there's a feeding, you're feeding the dog. He gets fed by the number of successes they have, and they're usually right on tune with that. I did not, and so the agency also was involved in that at that time. So that was they trained the same way. They're back and forth between the ATF and the CIA were back and forth, and they do similar training. I don't know exactly what they do now, but at that time it was not uncommon to see them show up at the ATF, or I would go down to the CIA training area and work down there. So it was pretty good.
Yeah, that would be pretty neat. So when you went over to Iraq, were you working for a company as a private contractor, or was it just straight for the government, or what was it?
Oh, I was a State Department employee.
Oh, you did say that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Is that a GS job?
Yes.
Okay. Not bad. Pretty good. Did
It
you,
was good.
what did you think of Iraq? What were we doing with dogs there?
Well, it's not fair for me to comment and say it was really okay, because a lot of people were, fought over there, but in the embassies is where I stayed. So I was in the Baghdad embassy, and I would travel to different places in the country. And it wasn't bad. It was, the Baghdad embassy is the biggest embassy in the world, I think. So it was, I had my own room, they fed you good. I worked a lot of hours every day, and for 60 days there and 60 days home. So it worked out pretty well. A lot of dogs.
Oh, I bet. Yeah. What year was that?
That was 2015, and I was over in 2017.
Okay. So going back to your time at St. Paul, you're in there at USPCA. How how far back does that relationship go with St. Paul and USPCA?
It was there when I started. So I started a long time ago, and St. Paul at that time was directly related backwards towards Washington, D.C. So Washington, D.C. trained a Minneapolis trainer, and the Minneapolis trainers trained a St. Paul trainer, and that's how we were all functioning back in those days. So back then, again, it was the USPCA had started about 4 years earlier, when everybody joined up and it became the USPCA. Of course, at that time, I did not even know that. And so we were there. I mean, we trained, we tested USPCA, we did a lot of that. But basically we were, just doing street scenarios for the most part.
It's funny you say that about DC, because my agency Canton is tied back to DC. Our first trainer back in 1985 was a guy named Dave Haskins. And yeah, I think he did class number 1 and class number 2, and then trained up a guy named Rick Cook, who was one of the handlers, to be the first city trainer. And we actually named a building after him out at our field.
I remember Rick too.
Yeah. Oh yeah. It's and when I mentioned Gary, you probably knew Gary Half too. Wiener, they called him for a lot of reasons. But anyways, that's crazy how that worked. DC, I think they said back in the day that DC had like upwards of like 100 dogs or something crazy.
They had a lot of dogs. I remember in 1978 going to the national event there, and was totally impressed with the things that a DC dog handlers could do with their dogs. It was unreal for me as a new person to be able to see that. And it was something to see, inspiring actually.
Yeah, the guys love them. The old time guys talk about them all the time. We're going to go ahead and take a break now. For you on Patreon, stick around. We're coming right back. For you guys listening everywhere else on YouTube or whatever, don't skip through the commercials, please. We have a lot of great sponsors in there. When we come back, we are going to dive into USPCA, kind of a little bit of the past and kind of where we see USPCA's role going forward in the future. We'll be right back. All right, guys, one of our best sponsors, one of our oldest sponsors are the Perkinsons down in Harmony, North Carolina at Highland Canine. We have a ton of people going down there for their handler schools, their trainer schools, their full-on dog training schools where you learn police dogs, pet dogs, all aspects of it. They have amazing dogs for sale, classes for police, classes for police supervisors, pretty much a full gamut of anything you need in the dog world. Highland Canine definitely is the place to go. Check it out. I can't tell you enough about how great these people are. Everybody I know that's been there for their training say it is no joke. Check them out. TacticalPoliceCanineTraining.com. Get your butt down there in North Carolina, man, and learn.
Speaking of full service, it's no secret that we love the guys up in Colorado Springs at Ray Allen Canine Equipment. We use their products every single day. Their mission statement says it all: to be a world leader in the quality and innovation of professional canine equipment for police, military, Schutzen, ring sport, to exceed our customers' expectations, to deliver on time, every time, at a fair price. We full-heartedly believe that they are true to that statement. Since it's our go-to one-stop shop for everything canine, they literally have everything there except the damn dog. You can get in the car, but they have inserts, they have hot poppers, they have e-collars, they have leashes, they have regular collars, harnesses, they have muzzles, they have some of the working dog dry goods muzzles that end up starting their life in my living room. So be sure to check them out, rayallen.com, and use the discount code Working Dog Radio written all the way out for 10% off.
We really are so lucky and happy to be partners with the guys down at Kinetic Dog Food. The stuff that those guys are doing, man, it's so good. The ingredients that they have, we had them on a podcast. It was eye-opening. Listen to them talk about the goofy stuff that goes into dog foods and in the business. They are honest. They are great people. Kinetic Dog Food. They will drop ship you a pallet if that's your thing. If you got that many dogs, they'll drop ship you a pallet anywhere you need it. KineticDogFood.com, best in the industry, and definitely a personal favorite of Working Dog Radio. KineticDogFood.com.
Yeah, and if you're out on the east side of the country, be sure to hit up Southern Coast Canine. They're a reputable canine kennel that does dog sales and training services located in sunny New Smyrna, Florida. Southern Coast Canine provides services worldwide, from purchasing your next single or dual purpose working dog to handler courses and seminars. Southern Coast is a great resource to check them out. You know, the Heisers run a great ship down there, and obviously the weather's nice. So if you live in a part of the country where it sucks half the time, the year weather-wise, that's where you go in the wintertime. That's how you get your admin, send them down, get them to send you down there in the wintertime when it's nice and sunny. They do a fantastic job with trainers courses, decoy schools, and handler courses for green dogs and finished dogs and retreads too. So be sure to hit them up at Southern Coast Canine, that's letter K number 9.com, and get scheduled or go find you a dog.
Dogtra. We post on our social media all the time, Ted and I using Dogtra. I love everything about them. I think the Dogtra 1900S is the gold standard for police canine. It is a perfect collar. The remote size is perfect. You can do the hands-free device if you want. Their ball popper, their Dogtra YS 600 bark collar. I've got a drawer full of those at the kennel. I want my place nice and quiet. The bark collars solve a lot of the thrashing in cars. If you got that dog that spins up at training in the back of the car, get yourself a Dogtra YS 600 collar. One of our biggest sponsors, one of our biggest friends, big supporters of the podcast, dogtra.com. They do have a discount code too for us, is WDR10 for 10% off a single item over $200. Don't mess around. Don't wait. Dogtra.com.
Excellent. So we'll we'll give it a break here. You want to bring it back? You want me to?
Go ahead. You can do it.
Okay. And we'll edit this after the fact. Oh, the screen is bright. Oof. All right, we're back after the break. Working Dog Radio, broadcasting the bite. We are here with the executive director from USPCA, Don Slavik. We've been talking about him handling a Rottweiler, which I didn't know. And I'm sure there's a dude that follows us on Instagram and Facebook that is a Rottie breeder in Illinois that is just going to be ecstatic to hear this. He has been trying for years to get me to buy one of his Rottweilers. I'm like, dude, nobody's going to buy one from the police departments. Like the bids that come in say it's got to be a herder, but he's going to be like, see? So he's going to be ecstatic. His name's Glenn. Super nice guy. And then we've also talked about the ATF and going to Iraq. So, you know, we talked right before the break a little bit about the relationship with USPCA and how that started. So when did you sort of work into an advisory role or to like a leadership role in USPCA?
It started in the grassroots, more or less. It started with as a presidency in the local region. USPCA is made up of many regions, and then there's a national office. So I started there. Well, I don't even remember the year, but you know, that put me on the executive committee, and so then I started attending meetings where there was decision making available, and that was interesting. And then I became national secretary and then national president, and then I kind of went and did my thing with ATF and State Department, and then I just went into retirement. And then their opportunity came up to be the executive director, and I decided to put in for it, and I got it.
Yeah, kind of like Eric, after you retire, you end up working more.
Yes.
Just when I thought I was out.
Yeah,
Yes.
exactly.
Great
so for those listening, USPCA is the oldest and the largest certifying body in the country. So talk a little bit about the mission and why USPCA is an entity.
It all started back in August of 19. We're in our 50th year, right? We're in our 50th year now. We're going to be 50 years old in August of next year. But it started when two organizations got together. So there was only a couple of organizations back in those days. And this is what I was told. I was not there then, but they joined together and they started this thing going. Now, I happened to see not too long ago, our first judges, our first evaluators were from AKC. And so that went for a couple of years until we got ourselves going. And then we developed our own judges and doing different things. And I think basically we were, it was an interesting time because we went to a lot of seminars. We learned from people. It was a good time for handlers to just kind of get an idea of what everybody else was doing around the country. And that we went from there. And then so the system now is set up where we're judge. I think it's an opportunity for a person to see what other people do and what things you don't want to do with your dog, you know, by looking at other people evaluating. So it's a nice system. People criticize us a little bit for the competition part of it. And so it's back and forth about that. Competition is good in that it helps you or charges you to get your dog to be a better dog and you a better person as a handler. So that's the way we look at it. It's up to people that, you know, if they like it or they don't like it. It's just strictly up to them.
So one of the things that might be a bit of a misnomer people don't understand is that in USPCA to get certified, you know, your national certification, you don't actually have to compete. That it's completely separate. And I think maybe people don't understand that.
Oh, yes. Certification is a certification, whether you're looking to do anything like competing or whatever, it doesn't make any difference. You're correct. It's just going there and watching how seeing what handlers can do with their dogs. And you think, I'd like to do that with my dog. And that's what's important about it, is understanding the possibilities. by looking at people who are a little more veteran, a little more practiced, looking at trainers, listening to trainers talk. It works out pretty well.
All the times that you had to certify, or if you competed or anything, is there any effed up story of yours? You're like, oh, shit, he's never done that before.
Well, I think that happens in every canine person's career. I mean, I guess, you could just, we used to have America's Most Wanted there all the time for a while. And you get out there and you get excited about what you were doing. And then you give the wrong command. And you think, how could I have given the wrong command? So the dog, he doesn't know what's going on. And he just doesn't come back. Or he doesn't go out because he's confused because you just changed something by giving the wrong command. So there's probably many times where I would have liked to had a do-over, I guess you could say. But that just makes me better down the road. So that's the way I look at it.
That's an interesting thing because when, I'm a trial decoy for PSA, and PSA is an extremely difficult sport, and I see people fail all the damn time in that sport. And, some of these people are my friends, guys down in Texas. And there was a guy that was in a try. I distinctly remember the dog was a big ass German Shepherd named Sarge. And the handler, I love him to death. He severed twice in the twos, 3 times actually in the twos. He gave the wrong command. The dog did the correct behavior. And I was kind of standing next to him, like, while we're standing there, like the dog's doing what he's supposed to do. And I'm like, fuck, I'm glad the dog's smarter than you are, because he's seen this enough to know he's supposed to do what he understands what he's supposed to do. And he's like, oh God, I know. But I've seen that multiple times. And, in PSA, if you do that, I mean, if you have to give a second command, it's, you get popped for it. So, or if you give the wrong command and the dog does the correct behavior per the command, you're like, well, so it's interesting to watch handlers under pressure, which is something interesting when we do with HRD. We talk about guys that perform really, really well in sterile environments. One of the scenarios we do in HRD, we call Fuck It Stalin. And it is designed to force a decision-making process under some gram conditions. And then we make them do a bunch of cardio. So their heart rates are up, and pretty much, in the debriefs, we always tell them, like, for every beat over resting your heart rate goes, your IQ drops by 2. So once you get up around 110, you're in the negative, and like decision-making skills go out the window. And under normal circumstances, like I just say, if I do this, what would you do? They're like, oh, this is what I do. I'm like, okay. And then they do it, and they do exactly the 20 minutes later, they do the exact opposite. And I'm like, oh, that's interesting. Why'd you do that? And they're like, I mean, Eric, tell the story how we named that.
Yeah. So we were in Colorado, and the scenario, we give a description, and there's things going on in the scenario. And the first couple guys seem to remember the information. But as we get to number 4, 5, 6, 7, whatever, they're over there BSing and talking, and they forget. And they come up, and the one guy didn't know if he should send his dog or not. He literally goes, fuck it, Stalin, and shrugged his shoulders and sent the dog, and off he went. And Ray and I were standing there. We go, that's the name of the scenario. Thank you. Wait, trying to figure it out. So before we get into like some of the legal stuff about the importance of like a USPCA and kind of where we're going in the future with it, talk about for the folks that don't know about like how the regions are set up, and if you join USPCA in your region, kind of what you're looking at, what is offered, and ability for you to take advantage of.
Sure. Each region is its own entity. It's like a state in the United States, and they have their own financials. They do everything on their own. They have their own, and I should say this right up front. If you have a department and you're listening and you do not have a foundation or something supporting you, you should get one. It is a great thing. It is not abused. It's a good tool for you to get some money into your program in your police departments. But the regions are all like that. They all are foundations. They all have some kind of a a system set up where that they do fundraising and things like that for themselves, and they provide their own training sometimes because they are unique in an organization that's really large. It's hard to nail down what each area or individual handlers need, but the regions are there. They see their handlers all the time. So we or they will do those kinds of things. And on the national level, we would provide national kind of exercises, things like that. But they have all of the events. So certification is, well, I guess for lack of a better term, it's a way for the courts to determine that somebody's looked at you and you've been deemed that you can do what you can find drugs, or you can go out and track, you can do those things. And then after that, it's up to the courts and other attorneys to figure out whether or not you really did it. So we provide these certifications, the regions provide. It's a process. You can't be the certifying official without many judging or evaluating things and tests, and you have to be elevated up over the years. So it's a process. And so you go in and you look. And I think what the difference between for us as USPCA is that our tests are not hard. I think that if you look at people who do deployment type tactics or actual deployments and have to do different things like narcotic searches, those narcotic searches are extremely more difficult than our test would be, and so that's the way we look at it. It's a way that you can get an idea of what you have, and then you go on from there. But that's what the regions do. They do seminars, they do their own testing. Now there's a great big test next month already, and I can't believe we're actually going to do one in the region in Minnesota where I'm from. So it's fun. It's a fun thing. You get to meet. They have meetings. They have like a Christmas party or whatever, things like that. It's good.
So, and if you're, we talked about it earlier with a national seminar, and I think some people think when they think USPCA, they think just the national certification. But I can tell you because since I was at Canton, we had 2 national seminars we hosted there. And if you're like, oh, what do we do? Just go there and talk about out and recall and whatever. But I can tell you at the national seminars that I was at, dude, they were rappelling off the buildings through elevator shafts. I told you we crashed a car doing a ridiculous high-speed pursuit scenario. And it was actually a lot of fun. Like there was a lot of stuff going on, a lot of bulk odor hides that a lot of people don't get used to or don't get to do. And so when you're in the region, your regional people set up training. They do a lot of stuff like that with the scenario-based stuff?
Yes. So if you think of certification as an event that happens once a year, that you really everybody has to do that. After that, it's all about doing street scenarios or advancement type training to get everybody in a place where they should be and show them how to maintain that and do that. And that's an ongoing process all year long. So it depends on the area you're from. Some people are like in Minnesota, where I'm from. They do a lot of tracks because there's a lot of open area. They do, and then they're doing just the stuff in the city. Like the searches in whatever. Taught in those searches are how air moves in a building. So you know why your dog is barking at a blank wall, and you understand what that's all about. And the same goes for wind and air movement in a track. So everything is being taught, not only how the dog is tracking, but what the handler is seeing. Because the most important part about this is, while it's good to have a good dog, it's great to have a good dog, I should say. It's also the handler has to make the decisions, like you were saying in your exercises. It's so true. When a handler gets to a situation, he has to have enough confidence in his dog's ability to go out and do what he has to do in a real deployment. And they only get that during training, because training develops the thought process where the handler can see what the dog is capable of in many different environments. So he knows how to react when he actually gets on the street, and he can make good decisions, because deployments are where bad decisions are made oftentimes.
We had a one of my dogs, one of the Torchlight dogs, one of my handlers down in Louisiana, what 4 nights ago, got called to a naked dude who was holding a family hostage with a knife, and I'm surprised he didn't get shot in Louisiana, but he got lucky. Naked dude holding a family hostage in their house with a knife. My handler shows up with another deputy, and he's been a deputy for 15 years, if I remember right. So he texted me early at like 2:00 in the morning after everything happened. He said, this is the worst fight I've been in 15 years as a police officer. I was like, God dang. All right. So what happened? So he kind of tells me, he kind of runs through the whole thing that happened. They ended up tasing this dude 7 times, and it was not happening. He was eating it like a Pokemon. And so the handler retrieves a dog from the car and sends the dog. And in hindsight, he says, I should have waited because one of the other deputies had a taser out, and still the dog crossed the wires and ended up getting tagged. But the dog engages and stays engaged, and the body cam falls off and records everything. And it was a 6.5-minute fight with 3 deputies and 1 dog. And this dude was not having it. And the entire time, my handler's telling me this, I'm thinking to myself, holy crap. And he said, but the one thing that I knew was that dog was not going to come off. There's a point in time when he actually removes the dog from the dude's arm so they can get a hold of him, and then reapplies him to his leg. And that got his attention, much more than anything else. But my handler tells me, this is the second dog from us. And he was like, dude, I knew that the dog was not going anywhere, and that was going to end. That was going to end the altercation. And it was almost 6.5 minutes after the reapplication of them getting this guy under control. Turns out he was on PCP, which, shocker, being running around naked at 2:00 in the morning and holding a family hostage. But he said that. And he came through the HRD down in Louisiana when we were down there. And it was straight up an environmental exercise. And it was very much the dog was on his own. I mean, granted, there was 3 dudes there, but, the dog wasn't getting reinforcement from the guy who was biting, wasn't getting reinforcement from the handler because he's had his own fight. And it's what Eric says. He's like, you got yours, I got mine. And the only way that was successful is because when I selected that dog and when he came through the process before, when we trained him up, and while he was here for a handler school, even though he was experienced, we did ground fighting, we did several things with him, and they continue to maintain that. And, it was successful because of that. And their admins were like, and apparently the dude was grabbing at one of the deputies' guns. And it was definitely a situation where it could have been another outcome. And the admins were like, hey, why didn't you just, why did you do that? And Tony's my handler said, I didn't really need it. The taser wasn't working. The dog was having an effect. And I knew that by, simply having the dog, we were going to have, a little more oomph behind it. And it turned out great. But he said the same thing. He was like, the only reason we were successful is because we had trained that as a unit, and we had trained that multiple times at my handler school and at HRD. And I knew exactly what was going to happen. And that's what I tell people when my guys get a bite. I'm like, do you know what was going to happen? And if they say no, I'm like, I messed up somewhere. But if they say, yeah, this and this and this and this and this is going to happen because we've done all of this in training, I'm like, perfect. Then I got no problem with it. But I've been surprised sometimes in the last couple of years, not much, but I get surprised occasionally. So I'm glad to hear that, the one thing that I do want to touch on and kind of like go down the road is during, before 2013, I think there's only 10 states now that have a mandatory certification out of 50. There's not a national certification coming that I know of. There's been talk of one for 20 something years. And I mean, they can't even agree on a national caliber that all law enforcement officers use, a national SWAT standard, or a national speed limit. And canine is not really on top of the list. So with that said, after Florida versus Harris, certifications became exceedingly important. They were important before, especially in states that were mandatory. But after 2013, they became almost a mandate. You have to be certified. You just do. And I say that, and I tell people that I'm like, you have to be certified. Just pick a body. pick USPCA, pick NAPWA, pick whoever, pick your state organization, but somebody has got to certify you. So let's talk a little bit about Florida versus Harris. I hope everybody listening to this is not or has heard about it. If not, we'll put a link to it in the show notes. But talk a little bit about what happened after that and how things changed for canine.
Yes, that was an interesting decision in that the Supreme Court decided that a dog, basically, or a team, when certified by a bona fide agency, is good to go. That's enough probable cause for on a search and things like that, so that they get probable cause to get warrants and different things based off of what the dog can do. Now, there has been some issues with that, in that some people handlers feel that that's all they need now is to be certified. And the case is a little bit more interesting than just that if the dog is certified and the handler is certified that you're good to go. When you come back and you go to court, they can actually really go after you in your training records and show that you really don't train, and maybe you did really find that or whatever you were supposed to be doing. And so you have to really, it makes records keeping even more needed, because you have to justify, you have, what you say you can do has to be backed up by your training records. So basically, everything that we've been talking about so far should be in somebody's training records, that you trained this way, that you did those things, that you were, I remember the first time that we had a guy with a gun and a hostage, and they said, get the dog. And it's like, we never practiced for that. You know, we didn't know anything about that. So that was something, I was listening to you talk, and that was a great thing. But the idea that you can go out and track after it's rained and still pick up the odor, the scent, you have to show that you actually can do that. That's something that's actually possible. And the idea that you can do narcotic searches or explosive searches, and you can find shells in a case, you have to demonstrate a step-by-step process where you did that. And it's actually even more so that when you have a apprehension dog, where you are training your dog and you're advancing your dog in every step of the way to improve that dog's ability to go out, locate, bark, whatever the scenario is going to be, or the real deployment is going to be. The worst deployment you could have is the one you didn't train for. And so that's a nightmare. So records are so good that they said that in the case in Harris, that you can come back to court and they can challenge your ability to do that. And records keeping that makes it even more mandatory.
Yeah. When it came out in 2013, I think all of us were like, oh, great. We don't have to worry about hit percentages. We don't have to worry about false alerts anymore and all this other stuff. And then for a year or so, everybody was like, oh, Harris is just a dope case. You don't got to worry about it. And then it started bubbling up a little bit, and people were like, no, it's a records case. And I think what happened is people just kind of paraphrased or read the Cliff Notes version and didn't read any of the concurring opinions or didn't read anything that went along with it. And when we started digging into it, and I think I remember the first time I came in contact with it, with an apprehension or with a use of force side with a dog, was in 2016. And I thought, whoa, wait a minute. Wait, hold a second. You know, this is a dope case. And then all of a sudden it's not, it's a records case. And then there was questions about the viability of certifications and the viability of records. And, you know, and I'd known, you know, from the beginning, like, look, because of this, all of your records are now subpoenable. They have been more before anyway, but like now it's like super important. So, you know, and I think you're right. Like it's set out, and, you know, because we talk about the three prongs of Graham all the time. And for Harris, with my handlers, in fact, I had the conversation with my guy in handler school yesterday. I was like, Harris has two prongs. You have to be certified and you have to keep records, and they got to be good and they have to be accurate. Like those are the two prongs of Harris. And you have to be certified by, this is what and I have a whole thing that we've written up that we give them that says, this is what Florida versus Harris says, and paraphrases, and we say, look, you got two things. You got to be certified by a bona fide third party, and you have to keep good records, and this is what they should include. And because everything is now subpoenable, and it goes everything from obedience to detection to tracking to bite work to whatever utility you are doing with this dog, then it needs to be done. So for a long time in this gap from 2000 up until, 2 weeks ago, I had somebody flat out tell me, I don't know why we shouldn't be expected to perform exactly how we certify. And I kind of looked at the comment and I kind of made a face like, I get what you're saying, but do you understand if the whole thing with US versus Jordan and some of the other cases where they're questioning the certification standard and they're asking, is it relevant? Like, do we obviously have to have it, but it's not stringent enough, or it doesn't encompass everything. So we have to now look at the records. And if you haven't done it, then how can we have any sort of reliability that we're going to have a positive outcome for somebody's Fourth Amendment rights if we don't know what we're doing? So I guess it kind of begs the question, where does USPCA and the modern certification, kind of moving post that and post some of the new cases that are coming out, we have to now look at the records. And if you haven't done it, then how can we have any sort of reliability that we're going to have a positive outcome for somebody's Fourth Amendment rights if we don't know what we're doing? So I guess it kind of begs the question, where does USPCA and the modern certification, kind of moving post that and post some of the new cases that are coming out, where does that all fit in with everything?
I think how you're taking them from this, now I'm certified, that's the first step. Now the next step is to put that dog, give them distractions, give them more challenges and stuff like that. And you make mistakes during that time because you are exposing the dog to something new. Excuse me, because they learn patterns, routines, environment, and all these different things is how they learn. They don't generalize that well. In other words, they don't go from point A, the sterile bite work, into advanced bite work just like that. You have to take them in advance in steps. So that's where we want to see people go.
So, Florida versus Harris, obviously, there are people, and you kind of hit on it, that are using that as a reason to not do, they're skipping the records part, like you said. They're using it as an excuse to only do certification training. We see it at HRDs where dogs will come and the handlers seem like good guys and the dogs look like they're pretty good. And then we start putting them through weird scenarios and they fall apart. And then invariably the handler will say, yeah, we wanted to come here because our bosses only let us do certification training. We were down in Louisiana and there was a great group of guys there from a department, and that's all they're ever allowed to do at every training day. And the dog struggled bad. And so my whole thing is screw the Harris part and the records part. You should be trying to not get killed because your dog didn't perform. And I've said this at a lot of HRDs, and I've said it on here, but not, maybe people have missed it or haven't listened. I worked a dog, my first dog, and all we really did for 14 weeks was certification type training. It was a long time, 14 weeks to do it. I mean, there was a little bit of scenario, but not so much. I'm telling you, and I'd stake everything on this, that I have more failures to engage with that dog in 3 years than any handler in the history of canine. I had 20 something, 23, 24, 25 a year for 3 years. And they made me keep working this dog because they didn't want to pay for a new dog. But all we did was certification type training. So it's really hits home with me when I hear and I meet these guys that are like, yeah, dude, all we do at every training is 150 feet of tracking in a big U. We do a long field send. We got to do recall out. And there's so many of them. Every training, that's all they do. And it's just like the guys that at training, all they do is dope. Like they show up and work the dope because their dogs are good at it. And they work the dope. And then I've got a doctor's appointment, or I've got a court, whatever. And then they don't want to do the stuff that comes in the afternoon. So USPCA going forward is a piece of the puzzle. Is it your intentions to maybe can think about adding some things or changing some things in certification, or just kind of seeing how things play out?
Oh, I think we've seen how things play out. I think that there's a real big disconnect between the certification and real world deployments. And that piece is training. And so how do we get handlers to do, how do we get handlers to understand that you also learn by training? You see how your dog reacts in different environments, different challenges. You then understand that your dog might react the same way in a real world deployment. So you get a feel of how it goes, because you are the most important person on the field. You are the motivator for all training. You are the motivator in how the canine works in a deployment. So when it happens, you have to be able to make a decision to reel the long line in because you now get around homes, or however you're going to, however you're going to, run your dogs in an environment where there are innocent people around. So you have to understand all the things about your dog and how he reacts to everything, so that you are able to make those intelligent decisions. Because I can't tell you how many times I've interviewed somebody or in an expert witness case where they had no clue about what the dog is just tracking. It didn't matter that they started in an open field and they ended up in a residential area with the line out 30 feet. And the dog gives a behavior change. Because they train in a sterile environment, when the dog gives a behavior change in the real world, they think they got the guy, just like they do in practice. You have to expose dogs to different environments in training. And that means you have to pick parts of the city or parts of the area where you work and run training in those areas. So as far as the USPCA, I think I'd like to see some changes in how we do things. As far as the certification part of it, get a little more real, but also we have this thing called COVID. And so we're trying to get through that. But we have many things happening. So it's not always the handler that's wrong in cases when it goes bad. So sometimes it's a bad policy, sometimes it's supervision. If you can think that a judge would not know about how dogs really learn, it's the same with your supervisors, your administrators. They may not understand it either, because nobody is trained or gets prepared for what a dog can do as they're advancing in the police department. So it's one about information all the way around, and training time now with the COVID, because there is a Canton, I think it is, about a court case from Canton about training.
Yes.
So,
Yep.
So you can't say, now I need you to work, now I need you to do this, and not allow the training, because now you're opening yourself into another whole world of a lawsuit kind of thing. So it's a real tough time right now for police departments. But we need to advance everybody. If you take away the certifications from everybody that gives certifications, we are all in the same boat trying to make our dogs better. So that's what we got to concentrate on now.
So in that vein, you'd have to be living not in the United States to know that 2020 has been an interesting year, aside from COVID. But for law enforcement, we've had some stuff up in your neck of the woods, the George Floyd protest and incident. We've had some stuff across the country, and there's been a large shift in how law enforcement is perceived and is represented and talked about in the media. canine is not immune to that. There's been some fairly large publications published some articles. One was an op-ed when Eric and I were in, I don't remember where we were, but I talked about it a little bit. I didn't mention it by name because the author refused to even come on and even talk to me. And then there was one that from the similar publication that you were in, you were talked about, or you were quoted in that article as well, talking about it. And there's a large publication in the South that is talking about canine, and then there's some issues in a mountain state that's happened recently, kind of revolving around some deployment issues to some other things. So in the way that is being presented. So I just want to also kind of like clear the air here. I reached out to both reporters from one of those publications and then two other ones from other ones. 3 of the 4 responded to me, and 3 of the 4 said that they were not interested in having an intelligent conversation about what they wrote. I tactfully pointed out that they cherry picked data, and then it was pretty much a clear-cut case of confirmation bias, and that their comments and the portrayal was ignorant of case law and how the industry as a whole does things, which I don't know if it was received or not. I don't really care because it's true. But the 4th email was not even responded to, and that was the one that the article that you were in. She didn't even bother responding. I gave her the opportunity, and they just kind of blew it off. So it is what it is. She
responded to me.
Yeah, well, and then the other guy, the guy that was quoted in the article with you, who is from Michigan, also responded to me, and that was not the best back and forth either. I really tend to think I gave the guy the benefit of the doubt in the article. It sounded like he was throwing a lot of people under the bus, and I told him that. And he agreed that his comments were. And then, I basically said, this is what you were quoted as saying. And he said, yeah, that's accurate. And if it feels like I'm throwing you under the bus, then, I wholeheartedly disagreed with the way that he portrayed a lot of things. And I think while well respected in our industry because of the work he's done, he kind of went off on a direction that I don't necessarily think is true. And some of the comments he made to me in email were very, telling in effect about how he views certain things, and it does revolve around certifications. And I pointed that out to him, and he was like, you're right. And I didn't think about it that way, but what do we as an industry, what do you think we as an industry, being like the director of Uspca, the largest certifying body in the country, what do we as an industry need to do to kind of combat the way that canine is being portrayed? Because right now, how it's being portrayed is out of control dogs that are vicious and just frankly fucking people up left and right. And we know, like the 3 of us sitting here, we know that that's not true. So how do we combat that as an industry?
Well, that's an interesting question because I know who you're talking about, and I've responded also to one of the reporters and got kind of an interesting response. So I have to do my own stuff now to find the facts. But what's happening, I think, is that, and I'm not exactly sure, but some people feel that because you have lots of collars on your dog, and you're using some other equipment, that means you do not have control of your dog, that you have to have that. This is what's relayed to me.
Yeah.
So, and I know that's exactly what you were just talking about. So that's I know
one of them. Yeah.
Yeah, I got it. So what it gives the impression that you need to have all of these things. And I've been approached twice now about your dog should be the same on the street as he is in the certification. And I'm thinking, you don't know, do you? And it's kind of like we're going to have to pick that up a little bit. We're going to have to run more exercises, more thoughtful things with canine handlers, more informational things, so they understand that they need to do some things to make themselves better. Now, when it comes to all the collars and things like that, I'm not exactly sure why that is. I was down south once years ago, and I said, my guy says, my dog has never came off of a bite. And I said, really? I says, well, go get your dog and put everything on him that you have when you go to work. And he came out with all those collars. And I said, why do you have those collars? He says, because I have to be able to get him off the bite. I says, do you ever practice getting him off a bite? He goes, no. And so that's part of the issue. So there's a lot of things that are happening there that if you are, so there are companies that have helped pick up the training slack. If we can go there for just a second, in the United States, that are pushing out dogs pretty fast. Don't know exactly whether they're good dogs or they're bad dogs, but let's just say that canine handlers coming into canine now are maybe different than they were back when everybody got 14 weeks. And so, and I'm a 14-week guy. We get 14-week classes. They still have 14-week classes in St. Paul. So the information that they need to have to be able to do this is needed. But now you put this person out in the middle of nowhere and he has no one to help him train. So now he not only has to learn how to train, but he better have the right dog for him. You know, and so that kind of a thing happens. It's an interesting thing. I think we're going to take this up. I know we're going to do, as soon as the COVID thing goes, we're going to start a lot of training. It's all about realistic scenario-based training or fixing some of the issues that have come up with this non-training part of COVID, or the lack of really good training that's should be going on in a normal dog's career. So it's about getting everything right. We have to do it in 2021. We're hoping that by next April, May, that it's going to be good to go. I'm not sure it will be, but that's what we're planning. And we're trying to get some seminars and things going up, and we are actually going to do hands-on training. So we are going to get down there with the guys and present scenario things and talk to them, walk them through the problems, make them understand. Sometimes, you know, when you're a trainer and you have a guy that doesn't get it about tracking and that you got to reel the leash in when you get in the shrubs, you just have to run a track through the shrubs and let them figure it out. That's the way it is. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Yes. I know exactly what you mean.
So, but overall, it's a real tense time right now because this is it. I don't know the cases in general out of the places that you talked about, and I understand where they are from. So I'm really not going to comment about if it's this person's fault or that person's fault. I have all of the publications that you talked about sitting on my desk right now, right here. So I'm reading them, I'm looking at them, I'm trying to understand what people are looking for that are actually putting these all together. They're pretty sensationalized art videos and pictures. I understand that, I get that. So maybe it's an educational process on our end, but we have to do something about it.
So it's a good thing that it's you and Ted that respond to these people, because all my responses are 3 words: eat a dick. To every one of those people, eat a dick. I
was semi-professional. Well, I was professional in the emails. Like
I know, that's what I'm saying. That's not my thing.
Eric doesn't do professional. No, I was professional. I was like, you know, here's what it looks like and here's what it sounds like, and I want to give you an opportunity to, you know, not make it sound like that. And they said, oh, no, that's it. I'm like, oh, okay, well. I mean, if that's what you think, then okay. I'm sorry you feel that way, but that's where we're at. So, you know, because when those articles came out, I woke up on that Sunday afternoon, the most recent one, and my phone had like 900 missed text messages and phone calls. They're like, have you read this? I'm like, what the fuck? No. So I went and read it. I'm like, oh God. So yeah, it's an interesting time. And I think you're right. And, you know, forever we have, you know, we start out every HRD by saying, you know, look, the second slide of the PowerPoint, if you're a Patreon member, you've seen it, or if you've been to an HRD, you've seen it. I say, you know, there isn't a person in this industry that's going to tell you should not certify of any note anyway. Even us, like Eric and I and Ray and everybody involved in HRD, we're like, you have to certify. I mean, it's a mandate now, especially after 2013. Even before that, we were like, you know, you need to, you know, courts love it. So do it. And, but where we have really sort of like bridged the gap is now the records and deployments and saying, look, you know, what you're certified to do versus what you're asked to do are not necessarily the same things all the time. Like you said, you know, taking from being sterile to the non-sterile environment of deployment, like story I told about my handler having to fight with that PCP zombie the other day. I mean, that is not in any certification, but it is a combination of a couple scenarios we do at HRD. And, you know, he told me that. He was like, you know, straight up just like X, Y, and Z. And I guess combined, I'm like, God dang, it's stressful as shit. But, you know, he knew that the dog was going to do it. But had he only done the basic minimum and just check the box, like, you know, his admin wanted him to do, just check the box. And it's like I tell guys at HRDs, and I tell my guys, like, you know, Canine in general is really small. Your admins most of the time will not notice you're around unless you mess something up or unless you do something really, really good. So like, if you just do your job, they're like, oh, great, you did your job. You certified once a year, no big deal. But you mess something up and it gets really weird all of a sudden really quick. So don't be that guy. Don't set case law. I don't want to see your name in federal court. Like, I don't want to hear about it. And all I want is for you to do your job and do it well. And I want your patrol sergeant or your lieutenant to be like, oh, great job. I've been overseeing you and I knew this was going to happen, which, you know, they're fucking lying, but do your job and make your superiors look good, and you'll have no problem. Right, Eric?
Oh yeah. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So anyways, yeah, eat a dick. That's got me in trouble before. So, anyways, Don, so when we have the guys that are kind of floundering, they don't know where to certify, they don't know kind of where they're going, they want to maybe get away from where they're at, or they just need help. How do they join USPCA? How do they reach out?
Oh, it's really easy. Our website's uspcacanine.com, and everything you need to know about joining. Plus, we have loads of information available that we want. What canine people do around the country affects all other canine people. So we understanding that we're all in the same boat. Just because we certify differently or we have some different thoughts on certification, we all really want everybody to do well, because it makes us all look pretty good also. So yeah, we have lots of things on our website, plus how to join, what it takes, different memberships. I talked to the national secretary. She's so busy right now with memberships. She says, I've never seen it this good. So that's good. I think that's a good thing. But training is everything. Everything. So if you don't train, that's a problem. So you have to remember, you have to train. If you don't have somebody to train, you don't have a trainer, which is in most cases, then you need to buddy up with somebody. You need to get a group together. You need to do something. And that's all I can say about that. It's training is everything.
Agree.
Yeah.
Funny.
Yeah. I have training every week with my guys. So for those listening, this is going to go up on Patreon the day before general population gets it. So it'll be on videos and those commercials. On workingdogradio.com, we have our t-shirts, which I think we're done with everything now, right? We got them all out, right, Eric?
Yeah, I think so. We were bringing one out a week, and then we just did a huge dump of new designs. We got, I don't know, like 8 new designs, dude.
Yep.
They're some pretty funny. There's a straight up trolling design on there where I just flat out straight up trolled some old school yank and crank folks kind of right after my little rant the other couple episodes ago. But couple more of our presidential series shirts that we've come up with.
Right.
They're pretty fun. And that's a thing on our website. You can get them on shirts and leggings and coffee cups and
whatever
hoodies and everything.
Yeah.
They're pretty awesome. So, Don, this was awesome, man.
For sure.
When we got to talk last night that you would be an amazing guest. Really thankful for everything you've done in Canine and going to continue to do for Canine. Hopefully we get to do some things together and kind of help change the narrative on some things. I always talk about how Canine, even though is used the most in special operations, they're always the bastard child. There's no SWAT 501c3s that have to raise money to buy their duty belts yet.
I don't see SWAT dudes selling T-shirts.
No, but yeah, here's every Canine guy is self-sufficient and their units are having to pay because we're always the bastard children, but we're used the most. So really appreciate everything you've done. And I know it can be thankless and it's very selfless to be an executive director of a big organization at times. And we just wanted to thank you for taking your time to come out here today.
For sure.
I appreciate it. Anytime, guys, anytime. And I did put it out to my people today about a little get together with you later on down the road. So that's already out there. All you got to do is ask Eric. He got it this morning.
I'm sure I'm sure I'll hear about it. Him or Ryan from Bryant. Yeah, I'm not going to mention his last name, but one of them will. I'm sure I'll hear about it. So for sure. So we appreciate it. It's been a fantastic interview. So for everybody listening, we got. I think the next one's going to be the Christmas episode. So this comes
right
out
before. Yep.
Yeah. So the next one comes out on the 23rd. So the 23rd is going to be the Christmas episode, which will talk about all the giveaways we're doing from the previous guests from last year and the year before. So we've had, when you look back at who we've had some big hitters on the show. So authors, equipment manufacturers. So we got some stuff coming out. We'll be doing that. I don't know. I think we're going to do like the 14 days of free canine stuff or whatever. So we're going to give a bunch away, dogs or stuff and ALM, and everybody's giving stuff away. So it's going to be awesome. So hit it up. Be sure to check us out, patreon.com, and then be sure to like us on YouTube. If you're watching this on YouTube, thank you.
Subscribe, please.
If you're not watching this on YouTube, if you're listening to us on iTunes or Google Play, go over to YouTube and look for Working Dog Radio. It's just youtube.workingdogradio.com and subscribe there, and you can listen to it in the background. So I know some of my handlers have been doing that. So yeah, thanks guys.
Appreciate it.
Somebody that's been with us since the beginning of this entire program has been Arnaud from ALM Equipment out in Vegas. Arnaud does a fantastic job making suits, tugs, and sleeves. One of our favorite things that we use at every HRD is the hidden sleeve from Arnaud, and I've got multiple suits, and so does Travis. We use them as a kennel all the time. ALMcanineequipment.com is where you can find it. Be sure to use the discount code WD Radio for 10% off your first order.
Tripwire Operations Group, man, what a great group of guys. It's an internationally recognized leading provider of products, services, and training for federal, state, and local law enforcement agencies and military units. Tripwire Operations Group is an ATF licensed explosive materials manufacturer, importer, exporter, and dealer with a wide range of explosive products to offer, including custom kits. These kits are great for detection canine imprinting, and they have 3 different kits to choose from. The use of all 3 kits combined creates a complete explosive threat package for canine teams. Be sure to check them out. If you go there to pick up your explosives, they will let you blow some crap up. Check them out at tripwireops.org.
Lastly, this music that you hear has been graciously granted to be used by us by Brother Deeg. He's a fantastic artist out of Louisiana. Guy does a magnificent job. He's been through Tulsa a couple times, and I've seen him live. Be sure to hit him up at brotherdeeg.net, DEGE.net, or go to Apple iTunes or Spotify or wherever and download and buy CDs. But be sure to hit him up, buy some shirts, and support the guy. The guy does a fantastic job, and he's a privateer kind of like we are. So brotherdeeg.net, DEGE, hit him up. This episode and this entire series and this podcast is co-produced and co-owned by Alicia Brandt.